At some point on my journey, I really had to decide if I wanted to live in scarcity anymore. And that's not to say that you can get rid of your fear, because we're human beings and fear is part of that experience. But to understand the dynamic of abundance and finding it within you is a really profound experience. So to find that connection for me, it was definitely a spiritual ride. And it has covered off an array of things like my health, my prosperity, my relationships, my purpose, you name it, becoming a parent. It was all on it wasn't one move that got me to find, really tap into that abundance and use it moment to moment. I think it's built up over time, understanding duality and really using that muscle, the energetic muscle, to tap into it and move from that place. Wasn't one place, wasn't one thing. And everybody's story is different. So I've called upon some friends and abundance experts I know and love and to support us along our journey, because by no means am I finished. And I think that's part of the reason I started this podcast. And so I welcome you. Hello, beautiful souls. Welcome to Your Abundance Podcast. It's a space for you to expand your abundance. I'm Eiran Trethowan, your host and your guide on this transformative journey. And I'm thrilled to have you co-creating this podcast with me. You calling in for answers, me calling in for answers, and my desire to ask questions is a great match. I'm really clear about the fact that I want this to be a place for you to expand, provide insight, lessons, and tools that you can carry on your own personal journey to abundance within you. Before we dive in to your abundance conversations, I invite you to subscribe, rate, and leave a review if you enjoy what we share, because your feedback fuels our mission and helps us reach more hearts in search of abundance. So if you're ready to expand your horizons and blow your mind and step into the energetic world of abundance, and your answer is yes, let's embark on another episode of Your Abundance Podcast.
All right. Hello and welcome everyone to this live interview with Eiran Trethowan. I'm super excited to talk to her because she has so much to share, so much experience. If you are catching this live, let us know. Just type in the comments where you're watching from. You can, if you're watching the replay, #replay. And this is space to ask your questions as they come. So I want to introduce Eiran. So first of all, Eiran, thank you for coming.
Hello.
So Eiran is a coach, holistic counselor, business leader, and advocate for women's leadership with over 2 decades of experience in corporate leadership, sales, and advertising, the track record of 10 years in entrepreneurship. And she is host of Your Abundance Podcast, which is all about abundance, entrepreneurship, personal development, and she inspires listeners to unlock their potential and cultivate fulfillment in all areas of their life. And she also has a very strong background in systemic constellations, my favorite thing to talk about, and it's so cool. So she's an organizational energy expert. So if you're watching this video and you're an entrepreneur, you want to stay tuned because she has a lot to say about all of that and the energy of working with systems. So Eiran, before we get into all of that stuff, I always like to ask the people that I'm interviewing about your journey, because I find it interesting. I meet a lot of women who start out in corporate and they climb the ladder and then they go, I'm done. And they get out of it. So
Yeah.
share with us. Yeah. You've overcome a lot.
I have overcome a lot in my life. It's like, where do we start in which part of the journey? It's like, which part of the journey would you like me to start in? My corporate life started really quite young. I was 21 when I fell in, or 20 actually. I was 20 years of age when I fell into advertising. I went to university for something completely different and dropped out. And I fell into an advertising career, really. And it sounds interesting that it sounds like I fell into it, but literally I did. I was doing data entry at a company and then started to do data entry at a media company. And that started my knowledge because it's really interesting that I now work with systems because I set up their advertising booking system. Like I helped them input all the data because we were back then, like I'm 48. So back then it was like, we were going from paper to screen, like digital. And so I was, 20 and sitting there keying in. I remember we have this thing called the TV Week Logie Awards in Australia. And I keyed in all the entries for that. That was my first thing that I ever did. And then they're like, oh, you're really good at this. Can you stay and help us build our system? So we started to put the data in of all the magazine advertising and all the advertisers. And that got me knowledge to then go for a job interview at another company where I started as an assistant. I got sacked after 2 months because I was so nervous because it was really my first real job, as you would say it. Like I worked in a bakery in my teens, but it was my first real interaction in that way outside of the temporary work that I was doing. And so, I fell into it and then I got sacked. And they said, you can look for another job, you can stay. My boss at the time, who was a very interesting man. He swore a lot. I think that's why I swear a lot now. Still to this day, but he gave me my first role, and then I had a senior assistant above me, and she used to complain a lot about what I did because I wasn't getting it yet. And they sacked me, and something clicked when they sacked me. I was just like, oh well, and then just started doing the job. And it was my last day, and I went into the office. We'd had a change of leadership, and I went into the office and said, oh, today's meant to be my last day. And they're like, what are you talking about? And I was like, this guy, Peter Murphy sacked me. And they're like, well, don't worry, just come back tomorrow. And so I stayed for 7 years. And I then proceeded to work my way up the ladder very quickly. So I started off working for like 3 people as an assistant, and then I worked for 20 people, and I would be very systematic in my work, churning out business presentations. I worked in the sales department. And so I had worked for all these sales account managers. And I was like, cocky little 21-year-old who was like, I think I can do this. So I requested, can I start selling? I think my first magazine I ever sold was Disney Adventures. And it took me on a ride, really. I was leading the whole children's division in about 2 years, and that included teenage magazines and all that kind of thing. And then hit 7 years, we'd had a change in leadership and moved to my next role in media. And so I did that for a while, worked in newspapers, cinema, I worked in radio. I've got the background. I worked for Dolly magazine. That was my main role before I left ACP. But we were the first companies to do digital media. So we were the first companies in Australia to have like a website for our magazine. And so that was a huge thing because we were first. Like it was pretty amazing. So I've been in digital for long before, like 20 something years. Yeah. And so life took me along that path, and through my career, like I worked in banking. I left, I traveled, worked in banking overseas. I lived in Scotland for a while. And then, so I had a bit of put my toe in the water in a few different industries for a little bit, and then ended up back in magazines, cinema. And then I launched, they had a division of our company that was fairly new. We had merged, and it was outdoor advertising, but it was in shopping centers. It was all digital. So it was all digital advertising, screen advertising that didn't exist before. And so I headed up the market in Melbourne, in Australia, and looked after the whole state and bought it from like, I don't know, it was about a $300,000 business to about 7 million by the time I left. So my ride through everywhere I went, as you know, as you mentioned, is about, people, women in corporate. Like I always went really just like I'd start again somewhere, and then I would work my way up and start again and work my way up. Through that, I had a lot of experiences with bullies. So a few times. And then in the final years of corporate, I got chronic fatigue. I actually had Graves' disease. I was diagnosed with Graves' disease first, which is a thyroid condition. And I got into that very, I healed that through the general, the Western
maybe more mainstream medicine. Yeah, Western medicine.
And then within 8 months, I was working for someone who was pretty full on. And my body just shut down. I'd had a couple of things going on, but I got chronic fatigue. And they said to me, you will never not have this. Even the Graves, they said I would always have Graves. And I was been in remission since 2004. I think it was 2004, roughly, maybe 2009. I keep adding my years together. But and then the next year, I got diagnosed with chronic fatigue. I had done a holistic counselling course in between this. So my journey into my body's not really happy, there's something else. And when I got home from Scotland, I had already started my spiritual awakening, I want to say, with Reiki and leading myself in a different direction than in corporate. So I started to integrate into healing modalities in my life. So that was already there. So then when I got sick and they said, you'll have this for the rest of your life. And I'm a bit of a person who says, if someone said, no, you can't, this is what it is. I'm like, no, there's always possibility, right? So like in my world, I'm pretty optimistic, but there is always potential. And I've known that since I was young. And so and my rebellious side worked for me in that, because it made me go, what do you mean I'm going to have to live with this forever? What do you mean I'm going to have to give up my job? What do you mean I'm going to have to cut back my hours? Like I was going home at lunchtime to sleep. I would have rests during the day. I was like, it was full on. And you have myalgia at the same time with chronic fatigue. I think you mentioned you've experienced it yourself. So your body is basically shutting down.
Yeah.
And at the time, that's when I had already known about constellation work, but I think at the time I was like, I need to do something about this. So I got diagnosed in the February, and then I started doing my diploma of holistic counselling, and I also started doing more study with family constellation. But I also found a GP who was holistic, and he was absolutely incredible. And his version of what chronic fatigue was very different to mainstream doctors. And he was talking about it being a virus, it's called an L-formed virus, so that it actually mirrors the mitochondria. Like it goes into the cell and then it comes out and it mirrors what the mitochondria looks like. And then the body doesn't know the difference, so it attacks both. And that's why your body starts to shut down, because we all know mitochondria, or if you don't know, mitochondria is your life source.
Energy. Yeah. It's the energy production.
So once that was established, I changed my diet completely. But I also did some constellation work on it, because
often myalgia and chronic fatigue is like you're not getting in family systemic work. We always talk about, there's the nurturing side, but there's also this stepping into the world and feeling safe. Or also the other thing that might turn up is like you've got one foot in the system and you're trying to move out. And so what happens is it's almost like trauma of some kind, where you are stepping back and forth because you're trying to move, the energy's trying to move. But what happens is because you're not going anywhere, it's completely exhausting.
Yeah.
So energetically, what's trying to happen is this. The two wheels are trying to move. But what's happening with chronic fatigue is like you just can't, you get started, but then you can't. It's why people who are in hustle end up a lot of the time, their body shuts down because they're go like this. And then the body goes, no, I haven't got any more to give. And then it starts to get in this, I can't get started again energy. So yeah, I did a bit of work around that at the time. And then that got me more into, like, I just loved constellations. Like I loved them. I was like, this is my connection. I don't know whether it was because it was like, this is my connection to God again, or I don't know. It's not, and I say God lightly is in not religious God. I'm talking about just your faith and who you are and as a person in your spirituality. So yeah, that's that. And when I got to the end of corporate, I was still in corporate at that stage. And I'd done an organizational constellation that had said I couldn't thrive in the job I was in. And I was already quite senior in the job. And I was like, sure, let me test this for a bit. And then eventually what happens is the S hits the fan and we spontaneously combust and stuff happens and you exit. So I left.
So that was revealed in a constellation, you're telling me?
It happened, yeah.
Before it happened, that basically the constellation was saying, you're not going to
thrive in this.
You're not going to thrive if you stay in this.
Yeah.
Wow.
This is what constellation does. Like it's not about being psychic, although I'm highly intuitive.
Yeah.
There is the thing about energy systems and the universe and organizational energy. The universe is constantly trying to organize itself because it has a system.
Yeah.
And whether it's your family system, your organizational system, whether it's your body system, like it's really doesn't, anything that's systemic, you have a system you can do the work in. And so this is why it's really good for trauma work, but it's also good in business because what I've seen many, many times is, and I think I did this naturally in sales. Like I did this naturally as a person. Like it was because it is my innate genius to see certain things. When I was in sales, I would go into a business to sell them a product that we were selling in the business. But my outlook was never, I'm going in to sell you this. My outlook was always, where do we fit into this system for you? And how do we use this product to benefit you? It was always. So I made $50 million across my career, easily for organizations I've worked for. Easily, because of the way I looked at the system. I'm looking at it from what does the system need to then get the positive, thriving outcome.
Right. It's not a cookie cutter sales process. It's like, it seems much more authentic. Yeah. Really, it's like, okay, well, I mean, sales is supposed to be about service, right?
Yeah, it's customer focused. But it's funny because my learning to translate that to being someone who people come to buy from, like the energy wasn't the same from selling from myself as an entrepreneur. So even though I did that, I went in and said, this is what I'm doing for you with this product. It was because I didn't need to sell what I do first. So I didn't need to sell that I can see into this system for you and see the benefit, right? When I became an entrepreneur and I'm selling my genius, which is I can see into your business and tell you what's going on, right? Yeah. And by the way, in any part, any division of your business, like there's no, I'm only looking at marketing. I can come in and look at the whole thing and go, right, depending on how long you want to spend with me and how much, you want me to work in there. Like, I'm like, this, we're going to do this, we're going to do this. And it's all based on the thriving. It's like, what is it that we need to create profit? Because in an organization, thriving is profit.
Right.
Now, I say profit in that it's not just about money. Yeah. So this is about foundation. When you make it just about money, profit doesn't really come up. Hustle comes up.
Yeah. Right. Yes.
Yeah? If you make it about fear and money and the foundations, a lot of organizations are set in. And so a lot of entrepreneurs have come out of systems and said, I don't want to be in this hustle. And then they start and they're like, but what do I do? Because the systems we've been taught often are, you're a number, this is where you sit in the system. It's a fear-based system. So there'll be like shame, leadership, it's not leaders, it's managers, they're managing, aiding what's happening, they're not leading. And that's evolving over time. Like, that's changed a lot in different organizations, but essentially that's what we're looking at. When the system isn't working, the first place I look is the foundations. Like, what's the setup? And the thing is, a lot of the time, a system is built from a human. So an organizational system is often a man-made thing. Yeah. And so that's how family constellation links to organizational energy, because your foundations as a person will drive what you build. And often when we're working in organizations that are, like, I've worked in organizations that are hundreds of years old, and that to change that culture from fear takes work. That's why they don't do it. It's like, we have to go, so much stuff to change. And it is about patriarchal systems, because women don't work as well in them. We don't function as well. Our body systems are not like
our bodies don't function in them at all. Yeah. I mean, that's what I experience. It's true. It burns women out. Yeah. I'd love for you to talk more about that, because are you finding when you're working with businesses, do you find that your business tends to attract female entrepreneurs, female business owners?
So, I usually attract female business owners, either entrepreneurs who are trying, they've got themselves, they started their, it's a coaching business, healing business, or, whatever they desire in their career. And they found themselves in this kind of like, wow, I've got so much on. How do I move? And, understanding a lot of the thing about corporation, or understanding when to expand and what's ready, what are you ready for? Like, that impacts your business a lot as well. And I find that women, and I work with men a lot too. So I want to just put that as a caveat. Like, what happens is the woman will come and then the men come, because the woman's brought them in. So I've worked with businesses, but the men come with that woman as a group, or the partner's friend was there, and then they send their husband or something like that. So like that kind of thing, like I don't like, I've been, different ways of how the client comes, but majority of women, because they're looking for, how do I do this in alignment with me? Like, if I set it up from fear and we clean that up. So a lot of the time, a customer will come in and I'm like, well, we need to clean up all this other stuff here in your life for this to function well in your business, because you've set your business up based on fear. I did it for myself. Like, I left corporate because of not great things. Like, it wasn't a fun thing. So I loved my work, but the way my body reacted and the way I felt was like, no, don't make me do this anymore. And so I had to find another way even in myself. So I've been in business for 10 years, and that has been an evolution in itself, because each time, and I use constellations constantly to work out, what am I inviting in? Where am I at? What am I doing? And then I had a child late in my life, and who's now 4. And at the time, I had to work out, how do I function as a solo parent and run a business and do all those things? Because there's so many hats and identities to wear. I was all about, I want ease. And I deserve to have money, even if I'm not currently doing much in my business. I deserve to have, and I say doing, this is the part that, like, I work in my genius. So I work very little, but I do, my work is so potent, I don't need to work a lot. And when you work in your genius, your potential, you don't actually work as hard. And then when you understand your genius and your potential, you invite people in their genius into your business to help you expand. Yeah. That's get to a point like, okay, I'm expanding, and now I'm feeling like I'm hustling again, or now I feel like I'm doing everything, because entrepreneurs wear every hat. You have to learn every role. It's like all of a sudden, oh my God, I'm doing everything. And so it's like, which role don't I love anymore? And then you invite someone who loves that in. Like, it's a very different strategy to, like, right, this is a business, we're building the foundations, we need this A, B, C, D, E. It doesn't work that way. You know, like traditional businesses, you need a marketing department, you need to sell something, you need to have a product to sell, you need to have product development, and they all exist in there, but it's like with the person running your own, like the human being who started their own business, like, it's like, which hats am I wearing today? Which one do I need to do? Who do I need to become? And I'm like, you just need to be you.
Interesting. So you do the healing work, not only for the business, but also for their own personal life. I'm really,
always.
So I'm really curious.
I will say just one thing on that. Depending on the business and what they've asked for. So sometimes I'm invited in because of conflict. So I'll get invited in, they need conflict resolution. And so I might be working with a group of directors, and they're like at each other. And so my job, there is personal development in that. They just don't, like, you know what I mean? Like I said, they're coming up, I want to do personal development. There is personal development in conflict resolution. You can't get it without it, because you can't create, like, peace without people giving up a part of themselves to find the peace, you know? And so new identities need to be formed to be able to say, well, we want to be in this business, we don't want to be in this business. And so we're forming, well, everybody's on the same page with the same vision, and then all of a sudden it's like, well, I'm not on the same vision. What do we need to do to, you know, separate the business? What do we need to do to, you know, let you out of the business? Like, it's very much, how do we work for the business, by the way? Because when you start working in bigger corporations, not just individuals, I work for the business. I don't work for the people who are leading the business. So the outcome is driven by the business, not driven by me.
The business is the entity.
The entity of the business. Correct. Yeah. So the business will, you know, this is the thing, like, it's like everything, organizational energy is always trying to find equilibrium, whether it's your body, whether it's you in a solo business, or whether it's an organization, a community, whatever. It's the business is just wanting someone to say, well, this is the direction. This is where we're headed. And when we can get everybody looking at that vision, my job is a lot easier.
Right. And so is that what you find, is that that's not everybody's actually tuned in with the vision?
Yeah.
I'm just really curious, when people come to work with you, do they really understand what they're stepping into when they choose to work with you? Yeah.
No.
I blanked out. Hang on. There I am. Yeah.
I want to say no. I can hear you. That the answer is no. Because, well, someone usually does at some point. And back in the day, most people used to come and say, I just got told to come and see you. They told me that they don't know what you do, but they know you do something that makes them really feel good. So they're like, okay. And so that's how I got, I built my business in the first 3 years to 6 figures on literally referrals and a website. Wow. So, and then, so in business, we hit plateaus, we hit certain levels of income, and then our own stuff kicks in, and there's all stuff in there for entrepreneurs in particular. But in business, there is certain structures and ways things work we can work with. And it's funny, I had a constellation workshop on the weekend, and we were looking at abundance. The theme was abundance, and one of the customers, clients, was family. So we usually look at the family first, and then we look at the business, depending on what they're there for. If they've come from personal, it'll usually show up as family. If they've come for business, that shows up, and sometimes we have to go back in the family. Now, what happened in this constellation, the family was like, no. So there's got to be a permission for us to work. And the family
said no to what?
They don't want to rectify the problem, because the problem solves a different problem for them, which was they didn't want this rectified, the thing that was showing up as the issue. And so for me, we broke for lunch. I said, okay, this is as far as we can go here. Because sometimes it's just acknowledging, okay, this is what it is. Like, this is the family's got something that they don't want shared. And so often people, they turn up and they're like, oh, I'm going to have a conversation. I'm like, no, you're not. or it's not going to look the way you think because of that permission. So I'm constantly working in what's the energy right for the system as well as the customer or the client. And so what happened was we broke for lunch, and I was like, that's it. And then we came back from lunch and we went in a whole different strategy, because I know, as you already know about me, someone says no, and I'm like, well, there's always another way, right? So there's always a way to the solution, because we work in the universe. And, if you work in quantum physics and you understand quantum fields, then you are going to know there are hundreds of thousands of possibilities of how to solve a problem. The only thing you need to change is the mindset that you're changing it from. Because you can't solve the problem from the same place you got the problem.
Correct.
And so what happened was I came back and I started to teach them what I'm teaching in my next free masterclass, which is Get Paid, which was talking about organizational systems and how they affect you personally or your business from making profit. So we can look at it from a bigger picture, whether it's a tax system, a banking system, even the ideology around income. Now, income as a language is money coming in, right? But income is often associated with a job.
Right.
Which keeps you in 9 to 5.
Right.
Right? The energy is, I work this many hours and I receive this income. Entrepreneurs who play in the income, and I'm like, this is patriarchal. No, this is the time for money stuff. Energetically, the profit that you want to make in your business can't come from you trying to increase an income.
Interesting.
Because you're only trying to increase your own. You're not trying to increase the profit in the business.
That is such an interesting, that's like the power of words, essentially. Or the power of intent. It's like, what words are you speaking? That's really fascinating. I just had an aha moment. Thank you.
It's funny because one of the trainings I've learned Constellation many, many years. So I've been in it for a long time. And we use healing sentences. Yeah. Words of power. What use them? I constantly spend time in the dictionary. I am literally looking up the meaning of words all the time. And not because sometimes I'm like, I come up with a word, I'm like, I don't even know what that means. Like, what does that word mean? I was like, I've been taught it somewhere, and I look it up, and there's like 6 meanings to one word. And so it's really, what's the meaning you're giving the word to? And then changing that meaning so that you create the income in it. If you're in a career, like people have come to me and receive $50,000 pay increases because we've shifted the block of like, hello, you're looking at this the wrong way. It's like, as soon as you look at it from, this is potential, and particularly women, they undervalue themselves. But the system is being set up. Like if you look at a corporation, women very rarely ask for money. They very rarely ask for pay rises. They stick with the system. They're in jobs that are like, this is what your pay is. This is the pay grade that you get. And there's no way to get an up level unless we give you our 2% increase. Like all that is set up for you to not succeed financially.
Yeah.
To expand who you really are, to live in your genius. It's like, well, this is the structure you're in, and that's where you, in an organization, you can only change energetically 2 up and 2 down in a structure. So unless you're at the top of the list, there's no way you're changing much in that business. Which is what happened when I had the constellation. It showed this is the structure of the business, and I wasn't too far from the top at that point.
Yeah, right.
I wasn't, like I was maybe 2 away. So I had some influence, but also it was about, can I thrive in this business? And the answer was no, because the energy had me down here and I was actually working up here. So it's like structurally, there was nowhere for me to go. Does that make sense? Like there was no expansion. And so at some point, the energy of the system it shows like, oh, you can't thrive here. And I went, okay, I'll see. I don't know, like a year later, and then literally I was like, it was like it went insane. Yeah, everything that happened, and I was just like, oh my God.
So when someone comes to receive a constellation for you or do work with you, and you're working on the organization, you're giving this constellation, working with the energy. I'm really curious because I'm trying to play in the mind of the people who are watching.
Yeah, please do.
Right. So they're gonna come to you and they're gonna like.
It's funny. Have you frozen? She's frozen. It's funny that she's frozen. That makes me laugh.
There we go.
I was going to say it's because I was like, I have an idea. So say we were looking at this, right? You were saying you run this as an educational platform, right? You're sitting here and you're expanding people. This is one of your geniuses to sit here and have conversations and expand people and yourself and us, like me and you. And putting yourself in the shoe of the customer is really important. But and so when you're saying, oh, well, I'm wanting to put myself in the questions, what questions would the customer want to know? Or why would they come to you? What's the reason? But often in constellation, the question is, well, these people are the people who are watching. I would say, what do you want to know? Because you are your customer at some point. So it's like staying within yourself and then looking at, well, what would they want to know? What questions would they want to know? What would I want to know? Well, I got my little thumbs up. So it's a new thing. It happens everywhere. It's like this is one.
I know. And I'm like, I thought it was only a Zoom thing, but I guess
I thought it was only a Zoom thing too. I'm like, oh my God, are we on Facebook or something? Like it's a Facebook thumbs up.
I think it's Facebook and YouTube. So
are we zooming in Facebook? Yeah, that could be why.
Yeah. Anyway, So basically, the energy just starts to shift after doing the work. There's an internal shift and there's an organizational shift, because my understanding, you're working with the quantum. So I'm sure people see and experience miracles, right? They're like, oh my God, this just happened. How did that happen? it just out of the blue. Like I didn't have to do anything. It just happened, you know?
So even family constellation, like the words that we would say sometimes is like, it's like having 10 years of therapy at once, because you don't, the idea is that you're witnessing something, you're seeing something that you don't understand, and making it, and not making it, but like the evolution of it. So the thing this morning that came to me when I was on my walk was our fate is entangled with so many things around us. Like fate is necessarily where we get caught up as a victim. Like we get caught up in this happened to me. Destiny is like, I chose this. I'm going to get this. This is where I'm going. Fate is often like entangled. So we're out of loyalty, underlying, it's all unconscious, out of hidden loyalty, I'm entangled with my grandmother because this happened to her and now it's happening to me. Now that the shift that we make in constellation is to say, to show people that it's not happening to you, it happened for you. And so when you see, you literally go from victim to like totally in control, have full choice of your life from that experience, because you all of a sudden something you think is happening to you or happened to you. My parents did this to me. This happened to me. They went to war. That happened to them. It's the same whether it's in now or transgenerational. That changes the dynamic straight away. And as soon as you witness it and the words change, you become more aligned to who you are. The equilibrium happens because the system, the world, like this is where I look at the universe, and the universe is saying, you know, we look at the planet. The planet is literally rectifying itself all the time. It is clear. If you look at nature, nature is always trying to...
Right, it's always moving towards coherence. Right.
Yeah, always.
Right.
Equilibrium. So this family system does the same. So if you have an illness and you're something like, I've developed chronic fatigue, now you might set up chronic fatigue and it may be different to what I set up, because the reason chronic fatigue is showing in your body is trying to rectify the system. Like it's trying to rebalance the system. So it sends symptoms to a symptom bearer. And the symptoms are often like, oh, this is what happens to me. This is what happened to me. This is what's happening to me. This is what's happening to me. And then shift is what actually happened for me, because it taught me this, 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 this. And I just saw this happen about my family that I didn't even know.
Right.
With the constellation, we're like, oh, there's a long lost sister. There was a person who was projecting, you know, often it's an exclusion because there's belonging and there's all these, I say rules, but they're lightly rules that we follow because everybody's systems are different. Right. And so that movement, that's literally what you're doing. And you could sit in therapy for 10 years and not move from it happened to me to it happened for me.
Oh, yeah. Right? 100%.
But the objective, and not every constellation teacher is going to say that, but that's what I, 10, 15 years of it.
Yeah.
Of the work. And then also what I know I used to do naturally before it was constellation work. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I definitely can see how like all of your years of experience in corporate and really just like being in the trenches of seeing how, patriarchal businesses are set up, how all of that. And now, I mean, what it feels like to me, okay, there, new earth consciousness, new earth, paradise realm, whatever, like we're moving into this different consciousness, like we are awakening. And it's like, okay, yeah, the patriarchy, this it's worked, it's served its purpose, and now we're moving into something else. And so, I just find it really amazing. Like it's no coincidence that here you are doing the family constellations work after having, really experiencing and knowing all this, what makes you an expert. It's because it's like, I know that, all of that, and I have the solution to really change it at a fundamental quantum energetic level. Because you can't, it's like you said, you can't just go in and think that you're going to change something, right? Or, well, let's just come up with a strategy. I mean, that's what, I would think that maybe a lot of business coaches will do. They'll look at your business, then they'll look at the numbers, and they'll look at and tell you, okay, you need to do this, this, and this, and you need to use this message and this, blah, 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 blah. And you just follow that formula. And oftentimes I think what I see is that it doesn't work for everyone.
Yeah.
And why is that? Well, it's because exactly what you're saying here right now is that there's deeper energetics that are happening, that are blocking that abundant flow.
Yeah, and the it's funny because it was showing me, it's like the spirituality, and I refer to spirituality as our faith in something greater than ourselves, our intuition, it's quantum, it's about the quantum field, things that are unknown to us, but known, like a remembering of who you are. Obviously, I think we talked about that in the podcast with you. We're talking about you just remembering.
Yeah.
But the reason I talk about spirituality as well, because often this is seen as woo because it's energy. But the reality is energy came first. Like, it's the first thing. It's the thing. You're a ball of, and we've learned that. We know now through science that there is, we are all forms of bumping around atoms and nucleuses, and that's who we are. And so sometimes, and I've seen this often, and for me, like, I think I've had every type of constellation in the world. Like, I'm just like, oh, another one. But when you've experienced trauma, the way that they work, just something on another level. Like, when it's funny because I don't talk about this much, but when I was 7, I had a really traumatic experience, and the memory of it was gone from my life. It was, so it would come up with smells, and it would come up with like weird, like I would know, like, oh, that thing, but it was always like, this happened, and then I wasn't there anymore. Do you know what I mean? Like, it was like I remember this much of it, and then I don't remember.
Yeah.
And so our brain works in a way that shuts down a lot of information, and so do but our body always remembers. So cellular memory, we talk about epigenetics in this work. Like, our body always remembers everything. Like, that's why it's a remembering, because it's like, oh. And it's also remembering and sometimes revisioning, because the story that came through our cells from the ancestor doesn't necessarily mean it was the one that actually was truth. Does that make sense? Like, which is why we do the constellation work. We're constantly, going back into the energy of, well, what was their illusion of, fear at the time, which then created the cellular memory. And so it was only recently I was looking at this thing that happened to me when I was 7, and I actually stopped breathing. So, but I remember hearing a voice, and it was really quite a horrible thing to happen to a 7-year-old. But at the same time, I stopped breathing, but I remember hearing the voice. It's kind of like when you listen to Elizabeth Gilbert, she's saying she's on the floor, the bathroom in the Eat, Pray, Love, and she hears the voice, go back to bed, Liz, go back to bed. But this was, I was 7, and I hear this voice that says, you have to breathe. You have to breathe. You have to. You matter.
Wow.
And right?
Yeah, that just, yeah.
And that voice, now I know, because at the time I had developed, like, over the years, what one would see as an abandonment issue. And my parents did not abandon me in any way, but it kept showing up, this pattern. And I was like, what is this about? And prior to that happening, I remember having a very, like, God and I loved God. Like, up until I was 7, like, I think we spoke about this last time, but I loved God. Like, it was just like such a thing for me as a child. We didn't go to, like, we were Catholic. I was brought up Catholic, but we weren't churchgoers. We didn't do anything, but I loved God. Like, I just it was fascinated me. And I would, have conversations with my great grandfather, and he would tell me that Mary was standing at the end of the bed ready to take him, and he's 90 and he's about to die. And, like, I had all these experiences where I was fascinated, but I just loved God so much. And this experience that happened to me, that voice, like, prior to the memory coming back about the voice telling me that I mattered and that I had to breathe, like, basically live, Eiran, like, this is why, gave me this connection with life that absolutely, like, drove everything that ever happened to me. But it also gave me this disconnection from God, the experience.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I realized this happened for me, because I love God that much. I never saw the disconnection, and most children don't. Yeah, whether you want to call it source, God, the universe, I don't want to trigger half the world because sometimes God is a little triggering. But, like, like, whatever you call the higher thing, the purpose, even your higher self or whatever, saying, Eiran, breathe, like, that disconnection was, all of a sudden I developed this other personality or other identity that said I was abandoned by God because this terrible thing happened.
Yeah, right.
And I was like, what, God? I've spent my life, like, looking and searching since that probably age of, like, what the hell do you mean? Like, this was my jam, this God thing. And now you've sent me into the fear. There's this whole terrible violence, and there's this horrible thing. And to the point of death, right? No breath. Like, where am I going to go from here? Like,
Wow.
So that understanding that abandonment identity was creating patterns in my financial life, in my thriving life, even though I am so abundant, there was just still this underlying thing. And it wasn't until that I saw it happen for me, because I needed to see duality. We can't live without duality. It doesn't exist. Like, we would, the universe, the way we live is, like, I really want to be enlightened, but no, we can't live here. We cannot live here. Unfortunately, that's when hello, see you later, we're gone, we're going up, because the duality, we need duality as our life lessons. And this is where we find peace, forgiveness. Like, as soon as you get out of victim, you are in, this is the lesson. This has happened for me. This is why I'm here. Like, this is what I do. And there was so long, it was like, how do I talk about God and business? Like, how do you talk about the universe and business? Because the event was tied to someone telling me, don't speak about it. So then I've got a whole thing about, well, you can't talk about God now. And I was like, loving God. But then all of a sudden I'm like, I'm not allowed to even speak, because it was all tied together, because our conscious, don't know the difference. And so I had to years unentangling this masculine, feminine energy and building these, like, what happened here? Because it didn't make sense why I had all these things happen. And I was born, was pretty happy. I mean, there was stuff, but, like, nothing that said you were abandoned. Like, my parents were there. I was like, well, my dad went to work a lot. Like, that's not going to create that kind of energy.
That
of,
level
like,
of
fully disconnected.
Dissociative, yeah.
And so I was like, where did this come from? And that was the realization, like, oh, right. And hearing that little voice at 7. So there's two things. It saved me at the same time as I was really angry at it. It's like, you showed me this for why? This is terrible. And then I had the story, I'm disconnected, which is the whole point. We're not.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
That is, yeah. Whew, that is like such a powerful, truly, truly powerful story and message. I think everybody needs to hear. I mean, that's right. Like, that's the thing with trauma, is that as long as you can't really, if you're not able to see how it's happened for you rather than against you or to you, you stay stuck in the trauma. It's really hard. I mean, I don't see how you can move beyond it until you are able to see. Just like with illness, like you were saying with illness, it's the same thing. It shows up because it's wanting you to see something. It's wanting you to experience something, some level of growth, some kind of expansion, some awakening to who you really are, which is that you are more than all of it, right? So, yeah.
And at the same time, the body will send pain signals from oversensitivity, right? So I've been looking at my IBS recently, and the nerves in your stomach are what actually tells the brain that there's a problem.
Yeah.
The brain doesn't send pain to anything unless there's a problem. But sometimes the oversensitivity that we have because of cellular memory, trauma, the stress of life, whatever it is, or the overwhelm, or the, whatever it is that you have, will tell the brain to send the pain even if there's not a problem. So you eat the food, you might get a bit of gas, but someone else eats the same food, gets exactly the same type of gas because onion gives everyone gas, but your body tells the brain, this isn't good, send some pain. We need to tell her to do something about it. That is literally what all pain is. And so if you are suffering from, whatever. You're in suffering, that is pain. It's telling you to do something about it. And what happens in the energetic emotion system, everybody's trying to do something about it, but it's the place that you're trying to do it from in the energy that changes it. So, if I look at I teach a thing called 5 Stages of Empowerment, and it's looking at the vibrational system of energy of, this is shame, guilt down here, and this is enlightenment up here. And in that experience, there's levels of needs, wants, desires, reclamation, love, and oneness, right? And as we move up and down, our emotions are all part of that. And when we shut down our emotions, which is what usually happens in trauma, or just because someone said you're not allowed, because emotions aren't okay for anyone to have, which is what happens a lot in business. We end up with a lot of people projecting their crap out, trying to use shaming, anger, judgment. There's different things, different versions where they're trying to use their emotion to get the momentum. So what I teach is, when you understand the emotional intelligence that you have and the messaging that it has, because every emotion has a message, that is show you how to get momentum without having to shame someone to do it, without having to use fear tactics, without having to get angry, outbursts, like all those things all come because we're trying to get our power. And the illusion that someone's taking it.
Yes. Right.
And so
100%.
Yeah, so it's a perpetual pattern that's been going on because people just then shame on shame on shame on shame. But authentic shame is gold. Like, it is like your best friend, because it actually tells you your value system, what's right and wrong for you, where that comes from. And when you move from authentic shame, you actually have boundaries. And then you don't say, then you're setting up a boundary that says, I don't need to work in this system. This is not healthy for me.
Right.
Or I want to change the way I work because I want a different way of, attracting clients who attract value for that, like the value systems. That's how you change culture, is by setting up the value. So, if an organization came in to work with me, we're not just like, this is your vision, this is your value system, this is your foundations, this is where you come from. We want to set boundaries within that system. That's why I teach my clients, like, my contracts are solid. Mm-hmm. They set the container for you to come in to a safe environment to work with me.
Yeah.
But if I'm in a group and it's a group setting, the container sets it for everybody to be safe, for everybody to come in, for everybody to be included, for everyone to belong, no matter what. And yes, there's rules that if you don't abide by those rules, unfortunately, you can't stay in the system, which is pretty much how it goes.
Mm-hmm.
That's how it was started from because, systemic work is started from Indigenous work, Indigenous culture. It's like, these are our rules and regulations. Are you within that? We were even talking about, I watched The Blacklist. I can't help it. I love it. This is my second time. 10 seasons.
I have to go watch it.
Right? And we were talking about criminals, and it's exactly the same. The criminals have their own, exactly the same system. There's morals within their system. You don't do this. Right. And then there's people who have no morals inside of that system. Like there's so there's all these. They might not sit in the normal structured legal system, but they've still got a system, and they're still functioning, and they're still doing exactly the same rules and regulations. It's just depending on where they sit in their morality and where their ethics sit, and where, and how expanded they are. Mm-hmm. So it's like, you're watching this show, and I'm like, he's terrible human sometimes, and then other times I'm like, how great is that? Because of his morality about something. So it's like, but it's really understanding that energy of what that sort of system is, but we set the rules and regulations. And if you're setting it from, I've got all shame on shame on shame on shame on shame, your regulation is not going to work, which come back to your nervous system, and then you end up with a hustle environment because no one's nervous systems are set.
Yeah. Wow.
It's so powerful. Yeah.
Dang. Yes, it is. I can see that. Super powerful. Amazing. So you have, you mentioned in the beginning, you have a masterclass that you're offering?
I do. I have a masterclass next week, I think. What is the date? The 9th. I think it's on the 9th. So next Thursday, Australian Eastern Standard Time, 7 p.m. You can sign up. We'll put the link in the later below. You can see, or head to my page at Eiran Trethowan. Can I put it in there? I'll have a look. Oh no, it says I have to. I'll send the link. We can put it in the chat.
Yeah, put it in the chat.
It's called Get Paid, and it's all about organizational constellations to increase profit. And we're looking at, and then from there, there's also, I'm going to take you through more than what we've talked about today, but looking at the systems and the banking systems and the things that are in the way of how you look at business, because and where you're ignoring the energy of I want to say ignoring, it's unconscious. So you're not sitting there ignoring it, but it's an unconscious thing of what's blocking your business from success in the way you want it. It's about desire. Like, how do you want to live? It's like, I can be successful making millions of dollars, but I'm running my run to the ground, and I'm in overwhelm and I'm hustling. Or I can run a business and I work to ease, equilibrium. I want to run a business where I make a lot of money and I want to run it well, but I don't want to have to lose who I am. So, I work on that. Wealth is not just money, and abundance is not just money. So culturally, there's a lot of shifts that we need to make too. We're starting with the money here, but there is an evolution on that. And then from there, you can lead in. I do one-on-one, obviously, coaching packages to work with me. I work with bigger businesses, so I'll come in and do work with them as well. And then I have a program called Know Your Business, which is specific for organizational constellations. So people can come in and buy a constellation spot across 3 weeks, and we're having 6 sessions. And in those sessions, you can also come in as a witness spot. So you're not buying a full constellation, but just watching other people's constellations, you receive so much gold in your own energy shifts. So you can just witness somebody's change and you'll be like, oh, that fits my model, or I need to shift this in me. And with constellation work, you obviously know this, but the audience watching may not, is that there is what we call representatives. And so we include people within the group to hold the energy of something that we need to look at. And what happens is often the representative, and this is why I always, in past years, everyone's like, oh, the representative role never really had the kind of crux that it needed to, no one kind of gave it as much like energy as I have to have a constellation. I'm like, no, you don't. It's like, yeah, you can have so much from just the representation. You will receive so much because you don't get it because. Yeah, it's for you. The representation is also for you. And I also am a multidimensional constellation facilitator, so I can facilitate within a facilitation. So I facilitate people who are representing in their own constellations as they are representing in someone else's. So it's very matrix looking, but not many people. I don't know any constellation facilitators who do that, but I do that.
Oh wow, that's something that people can come in and witness.
Yes,
that
type of witness. You can put your hand up to be a representative, or you can buy a spot in the constellation spot. At the moment, there's only 6 spots for constellations across the first program. But if you want to jump in to get paid, the 17th is Know Your Biz, and we start that 2 weeks late, 2 weeks from today. So
okay, awesome. So that's going to be put in the chat. Yes. And oh my goodness, you are on fire, Eiran. This is just like, I'm going to have to like go and just kind of close my eyes for a moment and let all of that sink in, because that was really amazing.
Yeah, wow. It says I need to join the chat to, hang on. I wonder if it'll let me do this. And then you can put it in the chat. There's the Get Paid Master. If you want to put that in the comments so people can access it there.
Yeah, let's see. Did you put that in the private chat?
I put it in the private chat. It won't let me put it in the
comments.
Got it. I haven't connected my YouTube.
So there we go. There it is.
Yeah.
Perfect.
You can sign up for that. Come along. It's on Zoom this next Thursday.
Awesome. Wow. Yeah. So good. So good. So good. Thank you so much, Eiran. Like really just, I am so grateful that you're here in this space, and I hope people see this and take advantage of this opportunity, because I have a strong gut feeling that you sign up for this masterclass, you're going to come away with some amazing insights, and just in whatever capacity that you connect with Eiran, you're going to walk away.
And I will say, if you're interested, try to come live, because I probably will do a bit of a demo.
Sweet. Awesome.
Yeah. So come along, because I'm going to do some demos. We'll see what happens.
Right, awesome. Yeah. Awesome. I know. You never know.
I know. Like anyone can come along, and I'll be like, hello, I'm getting you. So thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. And I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation, and you and I will chat again soon, I'm sure.
Awesome. All right.
Thank you everyone for watching.
And that wraps up another soul-nourishing episode of Your Abundance Podcast. I hope our time together has left you feeling inspired, enlightened, and ready to embrace the abundance that life has to offer. If you found value in today's episode, don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you never miss out on our future conversations. And hey, sharing is caring, so feel free to spread the abundance by sharing this podcast with your fellow seekers. And I can't wait to have our next conversation on Your Abundance Podcast. See you then.